We then jump forward 2 years to start part 2 of this book, where we follow Bryce as she goes to meet a vampire called Maximus Tertian to sell him an artifact on behalf of Jezebel. Whilst at this meeting, we see Bryce interact with Rune and find out that the relationship between the two of them is not great at all. In public, they basically pretend not to really know each other. But when Rune sees Bryce with Maximus, who he knows isn't a great guy, he's in fact very protective of Bryce. And at this point, you're like, not really acting like a distant cousin kind of behavior. That's because Rune is secretly Bryce's big brother. I just love him so much. Anywho, later on, Isaiah and Hunt go and visit Bryce at the shop and let her know that Maximus was killed after meeting her. This is when we have Archangel Mika, the head of the entire region, turn up and asks Bryce for her help with the case because she seems to be the only link between the murders plaguing the city. The first of which looks to have been the attack on the pack of devils. So 2 years later, deaths very similar are starting to pick up again. Mika approaches Bryce for aid, as she's the only link between the people who were attacked 2 years ago and the ones attacked now. And Micah needs to have this situation under control very quickly because another archangel called Sandriel is due to visit for a big summit in the city that takes place once a decade that's going on in a month's time. It turns out that Hun Athalar, one of the two angel police on the case, used to be owned by Sandriel. You know, he's a slave. Sandriel was his owner until about 4 years ago. She was Shahar, the leader of the 200-year-ago rebellion's twin sister. And we find out that Hunt and Shahar were actually in a relationship with each other. Sandriel spent 53 years basically trying to break Hunt and torturing him while he was under her control. When Mika bought Hunt from Sandriel, he made him a promise that he would set Hunt free after Hunt had killed as many people for Mika as he killed during the rebellion. So far, in the years he's been working for Mika, Hunt has killed 82 of the 2,217 people he needs to kill to be free. Hunt is very invested in not getting involved again with Sandriel. He hates her guts. And in comparison, much prefers working for Mika because there is some light at the end of the tunnel. He is working towards earning his freedom here, and that's something Sandriel would have never let happen at all, because Sandriel hates Hunt. And Sandriel is imminently coming to the city. Tensions are high. Mika decides to assign Hunt to work with Bryce on the case. And as an added incentive, lets Hunt know that if they manage to solve this spate of crimes before Sandriel appears in the city, Mika will lower the amount of assignments Hunt has to go on for him to only 10. So that's, if you've done the maths, that means Hunt will have to kill thousands of less people for Mika if he manages to help Bryce solve this crime quickly. We actually then shift focuses onto Rune, who is visiting his father. And Rune has a really big secret because in the world of Midgard, and specifically within Lunathium, when Vanir hit puberty, they go and visit the Oracle and have a statement about their future foretold. Rune has lied to his father about what the Oracle has predicted will happen in Rune's life, because Rune's fortune was that the royal line would end with him. So Rune is fully expecting to die before being able to have children, and he knows that as his father's heir, that is something his dad would 100% not be cool with. The Autumn King very much wants Rune to consider accepting a political marriage between Rune himself and the new witch queen Hypaxia. We find out that the Autumn King is very abusive to Rune. Rune is covered in tattoos because he is, in fact, scarred by his father's use of fire magic. His dad's basically burnt and scarred Rune to the point where he's covered those scars up with tattoos. Their relationship is not a good one. But Rune says, of course, he will consider his father's proposition, knowing that it's not going to work. He's not going to have any children with anybody, according to his interpretation of the Oracle's premonition. And the Autumn King tells Rune that he wants him to go and find Luna's horn. Autumn King thinks that this item could help rekindle the Fae's powers. It's a Fae artifact from one of their temples that, if we remember, has been missing for the last 2 years. It disappeared just before the instances of part 1, and all the way back then, Bryce was asked to start looking for it by Jezebel. Now, Bryce suspects that the Viper Queen may be behind the murders going on, as the Viper Queen also knew Danica and Maximus was actually killed on the Viper Queen's soil in her region of the city. But when Bryce goes over to the meat market, she finds out that the Viper Queen has an alibi, so she can't have killed Maximus, which rules the Viper Queen out of contention for the position of evil enemy who is going around killing people with the use of demons. Bryce decides to visit Rune, and this is where we get Rune teaching Bryce a bit of Fae mythos / history. We don't know what's true and what's not necessarily, but Rune shares that the horn of Luna originally belonged to Peleus, who the Fae in Midgard know as the first star-born prince. And he used this horn to fight the demons back in the very first war. Now we know that Peleus, as one of the star-born, is clearly related to somehow our homeboy Rune Dannon, as he is also starborn. And these kinds of things are hereditary. We get a little bit of context about the original High Fae here in Midgard. Peleus was the son-in-law of the Queen Thea. Thea had 2 daughters. Daughter Helena married Prince Peleus, the first starborn prince. Trust me, these people become very important in terms of the story of what happens in/to Midgard. But in essence, Rune, and thus also, because we're aware that their siblings Bryce, are descended from these people. They are from Peleus's bloodline and are thus descended from Thea, this first initial Fae queen in Midgard. During the First War, Peleus used the horn to fight all these demons, and to counteract the horn's magic, the demon prince of the pit, who's known as the Star Eater, is in charge of the 7th level of hell. He used Peleus's blood to create a demon known as the Crystallis demon, whose sole purpose is to hunt down Luna's magical horn. The description of the fight between Peleus and Apollyon, the prince of the pit, is incredibly similar to the description of the battle that happens atop Ramiel that is described to us in Silver Flames. There is even a drawing of the line in the sand and the use of the enemy's blood. But when Cassian tells the story, he's talking about the first Illyrian taking the blood of an enemy at the top of Ramiel. Whereas now we're hearing the story of Prince Peleus and his magical horn having his blood taken so that a new demon can be formed to hunt the horn. Almost like they are 2 different retellings of the same story, but from different sides. Does this mean Illyrian are demons? I don't know. But when you read ACOTAR first, and you've read Silver Flames by the time you read this book, you're going, wow, that's a very similar story. Maybe within the context of the Massiverse, there is some linkage here. But when Rune describes this new kind of demon, the Crystallos, Bryce recognizes it straight away as the creature she chased out of her apartment the night Danica was attacked. These murders are being done by the Crystallis demon. Rune tells Bryce before Peleus died, he banished all of the demons down to hell, and that sealed off the northern rift that allowed you to travel between worlds. Sounds a bit like a Weird Gate type situation from Throne of Glass. I don't know why I gestured here, the books aren't with me. But in doing so, the horn was broken. Rune tells Bryce he believes that both his starborn magic and this Crystallos demon are drawn to the horn somehow, which means that this missing horn is somehow the connective tissue between the murders. We then find out another body has been found, and this time it's an acolyte from Luna's temple, the place from which the horn was stolen 2 years ago. Hunt actually admits to Bryce, now that they're working together, that the angel she saved on the night of Danica's death was Micah. She saved like the most important person in Lunathian's life instead of chasing down the demon, which Bryce is a little bit like, well, kind of wish I hadn't now. Should have just let him die. And she storms off and heads to a venue called the White Raven, which explodes. Literally, a bomb goes off while Bryce is there. And the crazy thing is, in all of this kerfuffle, Bryce cares more about protecting anyone else than she does about herself, which is insane when so many of the people around her have already taken the drop and they're going to be fine. They're not quite immortal, but they're close to it. Whereas Bryce hasn't taken the drop. She's very easily killed, but she prioritizes saving friends and innocent people over keeping herself safe. And even Hunt is like, what on earth? This woman is crazy. It turns out that the bomb used had an image of the horn on it, and it's supposedly planted there by human rebels, a la Philip Briggs from earlier on in the book. Because of this and the fact that Bryce clearly is not very good at avoiding danger, Hunt moves in with her to provide 24-hour protection as they work on this case together. Meanwhile, Rune is focused on hunting for the horn. If you think Bryce and Hunt are looking into the murders, but they know the horn is the linkage between them all. So Rune is keeping his focus on finding this Fae artifact. So he visits Jezebel's archives and finds out Thea and Helena were also Starborn Fae. He was the first Starborn prince in Prythian, but Thea and Helena were also definitely Starborn Fae as well. He reads up that the horn works when a Starborn Fae pours light into it, and that it can only be fixed by light that isn't light, magic that isn't magic, which is crystal clear for how one might fix this broken horn that is now missing. Meanwhile, one of Rune's best friends, Declan, Rune's got a little guy squad, by the way. I'll introduce them each as they take part in the plot, but they're his housemates, they're his lads, and Declan is a tech whiz. And Declan's been looking into footage from the night the horn went missing 2 years ago, and he discovers by watching CCTV footage that the only person who didn't actually work at the temple, who went nearby just as all the power went out, was Danica. Dun, dun, dun. We then get Hunt going to visit the Oracle to try and get some information. Because Hunt has been a slave and was obviously a child many, many, many years ago, seeing as the war he took part in was 200 years ago, he's never actually had his fortune told by the Oracle of Lunathium. And when he goes in, the main takeaway from his session with the Oracle is that the Oracle tells him to stay away from Bryce Quinlan. You're like, why? What's going on? And we discover that when Bryce went to the temple to get her fortune told, the Oracle went blind for a week. Like, she tried to see Bryce's future, went blind, and just started screaming. This then resulted in Bryce's father, the Autumn King, basically disowning her at age 13 and wanting nothing to do with her, which is really sad. He was all invested in, like, what great future will my secret half-fae child have? And the Oracle's reaction has the Autumn King like, no, don't want anything to do with you anymore. He's really mean to her. He literally just dumps her and is like, yeah, okay. Do not care. And obviously, that completely ruins his relationship with Bryce. And as a consequence of that, Bryce's relationship with Rune, because Rune is quite visibly the Autumn King's son. He gets to act like part of the family, and Bryce is this like hidden little secret off to the side. How sad is that? Now, Bryce and Hunt go to visit Briggs to see if he has any insight on this recent bombing. And he claims that he had nothing to do with any of the deaths that have happened since his release. And he actually says he was a fan of Danica. And he reveals to Bryce that the reason he quite likes Danica is because Danica had given him a heads up that he was going to be arrested. And Bryce is getting the sense that maybe Danica's relationship with Philip Briggs wasn't quite as black and white as she had made it out to be, her just arresting him for being a bad guy and then being angry he'd gotten out on no charges. Suspicious, suspicious, suspicious. Danica's somehow-ish been involved with Philip Briggs, and she was over at the temple the night the horn disappeared. This is the point in the story where we realize Danica has been keeping a lot of secrets from people, and now she's dead, so how will we ever find out what's true and what's not? Can you imagine? That's Bryce's best friend, and she's finding these things out, and she's like, really? Damn, I didn't know that. Turns out there has now been another murder of a security guard at Luna's temple. And Bryce notices that all of the deaths are taking place along ley lines. Meanwhile, Declan, who's reviewing all the security footage for Rune, finds out that the tapes at the temple have been swapped out. So the night of the theft, there's no recording of what happens inside the building. So the tapes are going to be a dead end in finding out who stole the horn. And whoever took the horn was able to hack the security system. Now, both Bryce and Hunt suspect that Sabine, Danica's mother, and thus the daughter of the werewolf prime, is involved because she is one of the few people with high enough security clearance to do something like that. But the two of them need evidence to make that kind of accusation because Sabine is incredibly powerful. She is pretty much acting as the leader of the werewolves because her father is of a certain age. And she also, as an FYI, absolutely hates Bryce. So we know that we are about to start investigating Danica's mum as part 2 of the book ends.